and the scales on their body are pulsating when they're in the air.
Prehistoric and powerful tarpon.
Life's journey to the grave should not be one arriving with a pretty, well-preserved body, but rather skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly torn out, thoroughly used up, proclaiming wildly, "Wow, what a ride."
There's something fishy going on here.
Nathaniel, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah.
You've had such an amazing life in fishing, but I think, stemming from the first podcast, a lot of our listeners really reached out about your recovery and how fishing basically got you on a great path, and you've become one of the greatest fishermen that the sport has ever known. But getting back to your recovery, where are you with that now? Are you a sponsor? Do you still have to attend meetings as a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, look, as a follow-up, that part of my life is still intact. I would say in the same exact way it was 5 years ago when we first did the podcast. Has it been that long? 5 years?
We've been doing this 6 years now.
I mean, look, the thing about being an addict is you can give all that success away at any time. So maintaining that is really important to me. Now I have a daughter. If anything, I've got more to lose now than I did then. Mm-hmm. So,
is it still a slippery slope?
No, I mean, I think the comparison that I make is if, sometimes people grow up and they've got, very little, like sort of security financially, wise. And, sometimes those people go on to create around themselves a whole lot of financial security as a reaction to that. And the chances of those people like going broke again is pretty low because it's really important to them. But look, I mean, I still go to meetings regularly. I think it's a really important part of my approach to life. It feels more like normal now than it did at the beginning. Going back, I think it's been 16 years now. But yeah, I still take that part of my life the most seriously because it's the one part of my life that could, if I don't take care of it, could cost me everything. Mm-hmm. So
is there any sort of correlation between staying sober and your intensity for fishing and the commitment to both? Is there any sort of similarity? I
mean, I think when I got clean, I had to go through a period of time where like you just sort of act like you know what you're doing and you push forward kind of regardless. And so I think that ability maybe helps with fishing. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times do you go out and the weather's shitty and you're like inside, you're like, man, this is like, I'm terrible at this. I don't know what I'm doing. There's a whole lot of insecurity that accompanies that, but you just go through it anyway. Mm-hmm. Instead of sort of reflexively saying, well, I'm not going to fish anymore. Or I'm going to call it a day or whatever. So I think in that way, it's a similar, like, look, to work hard at anything is basically the same stuff.
Right.
And so I'm sure there is some relationship there, I would think.
Well, yeah, and I agree, and I can see that. And as you just mentioned, there's certain days where you don't feel like going out, you go out anyway and push just as hard.
Yeah.
And fishing with Steve Huff last month, he made mention that when you caught that world record on 6, the 143, it was really bad weather, and you guys went anyway, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, it was it wasn't bad weather yet, but it was going to be the next morning.
Yeah.
And so we had 3 days booked and we drove up for 1 day.
Right.
But that's that's the same type of mentality with all this stuff. I mean, if you want to pursue things, and you also have to do them at the expense of other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, prioritizing things, I think I've learned that if you prioritize something, it's not about that thing. It's about all the other stuff that I don't do. Mm-hmm. And that kind of focus is, I think, really important if I want to do something well. It's not just working hard at one thing, but it's actively not pursuing sort of confusion and dilution of that effort by doing 50,000 things. I think I can get confused. Like I can do anything, but I hear that and my brain kind of turns that into I can do everything. And that's not true at all.
Right.
And I think being focused is really, really important with whatever it is, fishing, recovery, like that kind of focus at the expense of getting, sort of overrun with other stuff is important.
Distracted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of people are really interested in about the March Merkin that you guys just won with 7 fish on the last day. And I want to get to that. But before I get there, I'd like to speak a little bit about this upcoming tournament. In 2 days, you have the Golden Fly.
Yeah, I mean, technically it starts tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow night I'll be at the captain's meeting.
Yeah. So what kind of practice have you and Ian done more recently to prepare yourselves? Because a lot of people just go fishing, but this is something really important. How do you prepare to win something that's really important?
Man, I wish Ian was here, and I have such a huge amount of respect for Ian. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about my part of that preparation, and it's so different than his because we have different jobs. But I think at the center of it is we fish 2 days a week. From basically doing the March Merkin was kind of a last minute thing. In the past, we've not done that. So from that tournament that historically Kat was fishing through the Gold Cup, we're fishing basically 2 days a week. And we're using that time to do everything we can to improve. And it's different when you're fishing to improve and to figure things out than it is to repeat something, if that makes sense. Like we're not going out trying to catch the maximum number of fish per day. We're going out trying to learn something and trying to figure out a new fly or a new technique. For Ian, it's trying to, fish in new places.
Right.
And I think that that's part of what's really great about our situation is we're not trying to execute something. We're trying to find something new to execute.
Right.
And so if I come home, it used to be like, wow, today was good. We caught 2. And now it's like, wow, today was really cool. We only had 1 bite, but it was on a new fly that we've never fished before. Or we were fishing somewhere new and we didn't really understand what was happening. And now I feel like we have an understanding of that. And that's like, as an angler who's always been obsessed with like fishing, just on like a base, like sort of fan level, like it just sounds cooler, like it just makes me feel like I'm in it and I'm excited about it, but it's also really hard. I mean, it's really hard to do that. And it's hard when, look, you've worked really hard and you're good and you're just not, you're trying things that don't work. And that's part of it. And that can hurt your ego too.
So how has your fishing been, I would say, like over the past month in regards to the last 15 years or 20 years you've been fishing down?
I think it's been a tougher season,
Because you want success leading into these tournaments to gain confidence.
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I think that you want it because it feels good.
Well, psychologically, yeah, you want to feel confident.
I don't think that feel good translates to outcome in the tournaments.
But is that different for you, from you as an angler versus Ian as a guide, where he's got to find the fish?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask him. I mean, that's why it's so like, and I've talked to Ian about this. I mean, we're in the car often for like an hour and a half at the beginning of each day. And we talk about all this stuff. I think he just views things very differently than I do. I love sort of like at the beginning of the season, I'm like, all right, here's 5 bags of flies that Dave Skoke has tied. And we're going to run through all of them. And like, I think of that as like a really fun thing, but for him as a guide, his clients are paying him for results. So it's kind of like a different, for me, I'm willing to just like burn all my opportunity to find one thing that might work and then try to exploit that. But
it's more experimental than grab and face.
Yeah. But that's also like just the difference in our personalities, but I think that's what makes Ian and I such a good team is that we are like super different. He's like very, like center of the effort and just working hard and keeping things simple. And like, I remember we were at at our house one time. We were talking about like some really complicated thing. There was another angler that was there for dinner, and we were talking about like what goes into catching fish and all this like sort of,
metaphysical stuff.
Yeah. And it finally got around to Ian, and we're like, Ian, like, what do you think? And he's like, man, I think that like wherever you're fishing, you just got to put the pole in the ground and start pushing. And I was like, that's about the smartest thing that anyone at this table has fucking
You know what?
said.
That's what we do. We suck at it. For sure. You've got to fish a lot. You got to fish hard. You got to fish long hours and fish different tides and different locations. And he really simplified it that way.
You got to try new things and not be scared about it. I mean, I think so much like when an angler goes fishing, usually they're trying to do what the guide is telling them to do. So they're trying to get the cast there. They're trying to get the angle right. They're trying to execute this system that has essentially been predetermined. But I think when you fish a lot and when you commit, however many hours to it, it gets to a point where you're able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the problem is not, can you get the cast there? Can you get the angle right? But it's like, can you do something different that is maybe going to work and maybe not? It's sort of like, when people are learning to cast, it's always about get it out there. Like get it as far as you can. Most people are going to be short. And then all of a sudden people get to a point where they can cast far enough. And now the question is very different. It's not throwing it as far as you can. It's like operating within your ability. And I think a similar shift happens over the years with fishing in these tournaments as you get to a point where you're saying, okay, I'm not just trying to execute this thing. I'm trying to find a new thing to do. But that's a really inefficient process. And it takes a long time, and you have to be able to withstand going out there and not getting bites. And that's a difficult thing because like you were saying with the confidence, it saps your confidence. It's sort of like record fishing, right? Like you catch a bunch of fish and you're like, all right, well now I'm going to catch one on whatever, 2 pound or 6 pound. But man, like be ready to suck for a long time. I mean, and Steve and I joke about it. It's like, one of our favorite little bits is like, if he's talking to someone, I'll kind of walk up and be like, I fished this guy for fucking 9 years. I only caught one tarpon, I mean, it's great because but honestly, like,
it's true.
It's true.
Right.
And it's like, but like, imagine especially if you're good at something and then you put yourself at that disadvantage, like you feel like, at least for me internally, you just feel like a failure. Yeah. Well, you have to withstand that.
Yeah. Well, Nate is relating to the world record on 6, the 143. It took you guys 8 years or 9 years to catch that fish.
8 or 9. I think,
just to remind everybody.
But hold on one second. To go back to the last month, and you were saying the season has been tough. What does that mean? What does that look like?
I just think the fish have not been around in the numbers that
you're used to seeing.
That they can be this time of year. And I think the fish that have been around are probably more pressured because people from, there's been a lot more like do-it-yourself stuff out there, which, it's not that I have any issue with that by itself, but I think the problem is that those people don't understand how the fishing works and how not to impact the fishery negatively. So you have a lot of people who don't really understand the rules of the road, and then also the way the fish move and what to do and what not to do to not impact them negatively. And so if you have more and more people doing it, and then one year for whatever reason, some percentage fewer fish show up, it can lead to an overpressured fish population, like quickly,
Yeah, we experienced that yesterday.
Sure.
It was really funny because there was a guy way on the inside on a bank, and we had an outside edge, so we didn't know if they were bone fishing or not. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, we catch a fish, and this guy just pulls out right in front of us. And
very close. And I was just going to pull over there, and I was going to be very kind. We were going to leave the spot, actually. I was just going to let him know that that's not the correct etiquette. That's all I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so I started pulling after him, and I got 80 yards away, and he got down and just started motoring offshore.
Racked his push-pull and moved.
Yeah.
Left.
But all I was going to do was just tell him.
Well, I think it's one of those things like the whole conversation about doing it yourself and that being like, I think because it is a hard thing to do. People often don't do it right. Because they don't do it right, they get yelled at.
Right.
And then there's this sort of counter narrative that exists, which is, I can't do anything right. And there's an unfairness about the situation down here. So therefore, I'm going to do whatever I want. And that, I think, is where, I mean, I certainly disagree with that. You know, I think it is harder to do this stuff yourself than with a guide. I didn't write that rule, but that's just how it is.
For sure.
But I think it's, you know, the idea that no matter what I do, someone's going to yell at me, so therefore I'm going to do whatever I want, is sort of used as a defense.
You know, I take a look at this because I was very fortunate like you. I've been here for almost 40 years, fishing 40, 50, 60 days a year for a number of years. So, and a lot of these guides are dead or they retired. So I feel like, you know, I inherited the opportunity to go fish with my son. I didn't learn all these spots. Yeah. But as someone who wants to come down here and learn and fish and go catch a tarpon, that is a daunting thought. Well, for them, they don't really understand. They think it's going to be fine. They're going to be able to get them. But knowing the intricacies of it and putting myself in their shoes without knowing what I know, I'm thinking this is really going to be hard for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it goes back to like what we were saying the other day on the boat. Like you know the spots west of Key West, you know the spots in the backcountry, but we don't know the spots intricately enough and understand the etiquette of those spots where we don't feel comfortable going back there because we don't want to screw someone else over.
Right.
So we just avoid those places.
I've been fishing with Ian now in the tournaments for I think 6 or 7 years, and I've watched him do it really right, and which is learning to fish new areas. And I've watched him do it, and the problem is it is tremendously inefficient. To do it right is really hard, especially when there's other boats around. And you have to sort of just fish a spot and then get to a point where you really understand that etiquette, and then fish like an adjacent spot. And then you sort of walk, you know, spot by spot in whatever direction you want. And I think the problem is that people feel entitled to do what they want to do. And they don't understand that it takes years, and that not all years are the same. I mean, this is the sort of part-time versus full-time discussion about guiding. Like, it's not that guiding part-time is a problem by itself, by its own virtue. But, you know, if it takes you 5 years to understand an area and how the fishing works, and someone's down here for 3 months a year, like, okay, it's tarpon season. Maybe it's, you know, like there's a briefer season, but the problem is you come down here for 5 years, that's only 15 months. That's like less than a year and a half. And it just, there isn't the time that's there to make it work. Plus when you're guiding, you know, you're not as free to make decisions on your own. You're less willing to make a choice that could pay off and might not. You're sort of focusing your efforts towards immediate success. Look, I think doing it yourself is really difficult. And I think for me personally, the time to fish an area is not when you can stay out of people's way or, you know, not have an altercation. But the time to fish an area is when you know it well enough and have the confidence to enforce the etiquette. And if you're not willing to say, listen, here's how it's done here, and have that conversation with someone. I mean, if you want to yell, that's on you. I don't think it helps anything. But if you're not willing to enforce the etiquette, then my feeling is I don't think you have enough respect for the people who have bled and worked and figured things out and spent their whole lives committed to this fishery. If you don't have enough respect to enforce the etiquette, to know it, then I don't think you're ready to fish a place. And learning that takes a while. And listen, I mean, I get it. No one wants to be on either side of that. No one wants to be yelled at. No one wants to yell. But we don't have to yell. But if you don't know something well enough to say, this is how it works there, then I don't think you should fish there. I think you're entitled to fish there. Like I'm entitled to an opinion. but I don't think you're qualified.
I think that's very well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's get back to your fishing real quickly. How often do you break a fish off when you're practice fishing? Have you ever broken a fish off in a tournament?
Yes, I've broken one off in a tournament. When I'm practice fishing, it's rare. I mean, okay, you're talking about breaking a fish off. Like, so last year in the Gold Cup, we hooked a fish, the line got wrapped around the handle and it broke off.
Just a mistake.
I mean, yeah, that's.
But I'm talking about when you're actually pulling on a fish.
If I'm pulling and I'm in control, it's very, very rare.
Right.
It did happen. It happened last year, unfortunately.
Because Nicky would call me Captain Breakoff.
He breaks everything off.
Not everything. But I want to know what the limit is. You know, when I was in tournaments, I think of all those years, in a span of 18 years, I think I only broke maybe one or two off.
But that's what you're doing is what I was talking about before.
Pushing the limit.
Yeah, well, you're trying to figure out stuff on your practice days that you apply when the lights are lit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And yeah, that's...
So on practice days, you don't break very many off?
No.
Yeah.
It's hard to break them off, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that tippet that we're fishing in the Gold Cup is labeled as 12 pound, but it tests at like 18 or 19 pounds, which means that it's IGFA 20 because it's above 8 kilos, 17.6.
You had to check you had to check out the Scientific Angler hard mono.
That's what we're using, 12 pound.
But the 16 breaks it like just under 18, right at 18.
No, it doesn't.
We just tested it the other day.
Really?
Yep.
Because all the 12 pound that I've tested from them, the maybe dozen and a half spools, all test around 19 pounds.
Yeah, we tested
You got to remember we were using improved blood nuts.
I tell you what, you want to bet?
Yeah, we weren't using Biminis when we tested that line.
Oh, okay.
We were testing our leader.
I was just about to get a bet, Nicky. Come on. He was so confident. Man, I think I had him for a couple $100 at least. But no, so that stuff that's 0.18 diameter, it tests at like between 18 and a half and 19 and a half pounds, the 12 pound. And that's my point, is it's hard to break that off.
Right.
Like it really is.
So how are you as an angler, how are you pushing your own personal envelope?
I think that the tarpon tournaments are really difficult for me as an angler for whatever reason. Like, it's always been something that like finding some success I've had to work harder for. So I think by pushing myself in that direction, it's sort of a choice to not just continue to fish the permit stuff. And I kind of left that behind, like Merkin notwithstanding, but to move toward doing things that are difficult rather than sitting in the stuff that's easy.
What's the hardest part about tarpon fishing or tournament tarpon fishing?
I don't know.
I can't imagine it being harder than winning permit tournaments.
Well, I had this discussion with you the other day, Nathaniel. I asked you, do you think that the permit field is more competitive or less competitive than the tarpon field?
Oh, it's for sure less competitive.
Really?
I mean, I don't mean that like negatively, but I think that what's happened in the tarpon tournaments is that they've been going on for longer. So there's been this sort of natural selection of competition to try to win them. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, let me say this. For me, like with permit fishing, I feel like I'm doing something that's really familiar, that was always kind of like from the beginning when I started permit fishing, I caught a permit, that permit would have counted in a permit tournament. So every permit I've caught, whatever, the number is, every one of those would have counted in a tournament. But when I started tarpon fishing, I didn't know enough, to be fishing on tippet and really like grabbing a fish on 16, I think is statistically harder to do than catching a permit. And here's why I say that. The permit tournaments are 3 days long. And, between on a bad year, like if the weather's terrible, sure, one fish will win. But usually it's like 3 to 5 fish, 2 on a low year. If these were tarpon tournaments, And the Gold Cup is 5 days. It's rare that people strap out. If the permit tournaments were 5 days long, it would absolutely take more than 5 to win, 100%. Now, the releases are another thing, but like, I think that statistically catching a tarpon on a per shot basis that's over 70 pounds on 16 and doing it right is harder than catching a permit. If you permit fish a lot and if you tarpon fish a lot, assuming, the same amount of effort that you've put your time in.
And describe what's so hard about it.
Well, a lot more can go wrong. I mean, the fish has got to be the right size.
Oh, it's talking about
it's got to be over
fish.
70 pounds. Yeah, weight fish. No, for sure weight fish. But
Right.
it's got to be over 70 pounds. The hook's got to stay in. Then you've got to land it.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot more angling skills involved.
Yeah, I just think there's more that can go wrong.
Well, also too, when you hook a permit, I mean, the
over.
probability of catching that fish is
done.
very high, right?
Yeah, hooks don't fall out.
It's nearly, things do happen, right? Like small permit, you have to fight them a little softer because if you pull their face around, you're pulling kind of out of their mouth, that kind of stuff. But like, it takes you about 2 months of doing it before you figure that out.
So if you hook 10 permit, you're going to most likely catch 8 to 10.
Yeah, we missed 3 bites in the Merkin and we caught 9. And our percentages were low. So we had 12 bites and caught 9.
Low percentage. You don't do that in tarpon fishing.
And I would say that's low.
Yeah.
But tarpon fishing, there's no way.
Yeah.
No way.
And if you put that added statistical like sort of pressure on it of like it needs to be over 70 pounds.
Right.
Now it's, those 12 bites, only 4 of them might be weights. So now, there's some chance involved.
So just a random question. What would be a weight fish for a permit if they had those in the permit tournaments? Just to relate like a 70-pound tarpon.
It's interesting. I mean, like there isn't a size minimum in the permit tournaments because we don't have down here the permit that are like this big. I mean, you can go to the beaches and find permit that are an inch and a half long. And you can go find fish that start about, I would say like 16 inches fork length. So a fish that weighs maybe a couple pounds. But from there back down to an inch, there's no, like in Mexico, you can catch permit that are this big. In Belize, you can catch them, but we don't have them here. If we do, I don't know where they are and they're not accessible really. And no one's catching them.
So what's like a 70-pound tarpon? Is it like a 12-pound permit if you could relate the two?
I would say probably 8.
8.
8 seems to be like, I don't know. I mean, it's just so different, man.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing about tarpon. The reason it matters is that like you can go find tarpon that are this big.
Right.
And if you scale that down, so like let's say that a 70-pound tarpon, you scale it down by 10%, right? Or by 90%. So 1/10 of that size. It's a 7-pound permit. Like what is a 10-pound tarpon scaled down?
Right.
It's like a pound, so, and you just, because you don't have that group of very small that are accessible, easier, smaller fish, it's just a different thing. And we don't worry about it.
Yeah. You don't need to do that.
Until someone figures out where the 5-inch permit are. And then, I'm sure that the rules would be amended.
How important was it for you when you won the Gold Cup 2 years ago?
Man, it was a real moment in my life. I had COVID, which was super uncomfortable. And we had, caught 2 the first day and then we caught 1 the second day. And it was a super low scoring week, but we watched our lead kind of like, fade throughout the week. We couldn't catch one on Wednesday. We couldn't catch one on Thursday. And, we didn't, you're just sitting there like thinking like, we're going to let this go. And we caught 1 on Friday morning and it was a pretty cool catch. Like it was trying to get under a bridge and, we landed and it was like a real moment. And then we didn't get a bite until about 1:00, another bite, and we hooked one and it took us offshore. We fought it for an hour and we lost it. The hook broke.
How big was it?
It was big enough. And I
can't imagine you fighting a fish for an hour.
Yeah.
It was just, no, you've been there. It was a mean fish offshore.
Gets
and
deep water.
You can't control the boat. And Ian and I have a really developed like system of what we want the boat to do, how to do it. And we're like, trying to do all this stuff, and the boat's sliding all around. We're way offshore off a marathon, and eventually the hook broke. And it was like, I was positive that we had lost. Like I was like, that was the one that we needed for sure. And it was funny. We get back to the boat basin. And I think the weight we caught was like, I don't know, 80 pounds or something. And I saw Dustin and Thane, and I hate to ask, but I was like, hey, like, how was it out there for you?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we got 2. And I knew they had a big weight. I knew they had like a 120 or something from day 2. And I knew they had a release or 2 releases. And
So now you're doing the math in your head.
and I added it up, and I was like, that's it. They beat us. And he's like, did you get one? I said, yeah, we got one, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Because if it had been like, I think 120 or 130, it would have been enough to overcome their score. Because he said his were small. So I told Ian, we got in the truck, and I'm like, that's it. They beat us. And he had already like agreed that he would go check in, because I was just fucking done, you know. And Ian's a great teammate that way. So he goes and checks in. And I was talking to Dustin. He called me, and he was like, we were just talking, like, you know, like the kind of like conversation about something when you're not talking about that thing.
Right.
And I said, hey, great work. And he's like, I don't think we passed you. And I'm like, I don't see how that's possible, but I didn't even engage with the topic. And
Why?
because it was just too painful, you know, that we'd let the thing slip. And we were also just talking about other stuff, you know. Well, we were talking about that, but we were talking around it, I guess. But it turns out they didn't have the releases. For whatever reason, when I looked at the scoreboard, I saw 2, or I just assumed that they had 2 releases, because those guys are like fucking incredible. Yeah. And so it just sort of like, and I got a text from Chris Scola that was like sort of a lead, like, hey, like this is looking pretty good or something, after I think Greg and Evan checked in. So it was really like unexpected the way it happened. Like in the moment, you know, there was no like drama to it. Like I was in the bluefin, like sitting there watching Terminator. And like my phone goes off, and someone's like, congrats. And I'm like, and then of course, like at that point, I'm like, wait a minute, like, because I'm starting to put it all together, you know, like maybe Dustin didn't pass us, and, you know, maybe it's for real.
I can't believe you weren't counting up like the numbers.
No, I was,
like,
but I thought they had 2 releases.
Oh,
So I knew
man.
that,
Yeah,
I
but
knew
I
they had a
would-
120.
But if
right?
I was in your spot, I would be analyzing that scoreboard up and down to make sure.
It was just, I mean, I resigned myself to that reality, and it didn't matter.
Wow.
Like once I knew we weren't going to win, but the year that Ian and I got 3rd, we strapped a short. As soon as I found out we weren't going to win, I was like, just walked away. And that's just how I am. Like, I care about the outcome. I think 2nd is way better than 3rd, and I'm proud of 2nd. I'm not one of these, like, if I'm not 1st, I'm last. It becomes like sort of a binary thing at that point. Like, and I don't know, just didn't want to engage with that topic.
Was that the most important win?
Yeah, for sure.
Of all your stuff?
For sure. Cause it took us, it took the most to do it, and we'd come close before. And look, to be honest, the Gold Cup is really, that was the one tournament that I felt like I had to win in order to feel like the way I wanted to feel about me and the work that I'm doing and all that stuff. And so in the modern era, when you have a team that's being hyper dominant, that's a tough time to feel like, okay, I have to do this. And we had a window that was available to us with super tough weather, and we capitalized in that window, and it meant the world. And it's not that I don't think we can ever do it again. I'm sure we can. But at the same time, like, it's different now because we've done it.
Right.
You know, and I know a lot of people who fished that tournament for a long time and should have and nearly did and just haven't yet.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Yeah.
We lost by 5 ounces one year. We came in and I saw Bob Branham at the dock, and I knew that we had about 1,200 points on the last day. We had, I think it was 2 releases and an 80-pound fish. And Azo from Japan, we were like 10 pounds apart going into the last day. And I asked Bob Branham if Azo caught anything. He said, yeah, he caught a 124.
Yep.
And now my mind is just
Yeah,
churning.
you're adding
Oh
it
my
up.
God, my stomach wanted to throw up.
Yeah.
And we go in and I get right in the wave master's face. I'm watching the pin
Yeah.
do all the calc. I'm right here. And the room is like, you could hear a pin drop. And he looks up and he goes, you lose by 8 ounces.
Yep.
5 points. I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when you strapped that short, that was the year prior or 2 years
That
prior?
was the first year that I fished with Ian.
So what?
That was 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
That was. So, and that was the last day, correct?
No, it was like day 3.
Oh, it was day 3.
Yeah. But when you added it up at the end of the
Right.
week, you know, and it was the same thing. Like we were in a good position going into the last day. We caught a weight, which we really needed to. And Chad and Scott, they beat us by, I think it was 2 points or something. It was a really small margin. And then Dave and Lewis, it was the first year they won. They caught, I think, 2 big weights on the last day and beat us. We wouldn't have won anyway if it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
You know, Chad and Scott would have won.
But talk about those guys for a second.
yeah.
They won 4 out of the last 5 years.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's really cool. To be that dominant in a field that's that competitive there's nothing but, you know,
High
like,
regard.
yeah, absolutely. It's incredible.
It is
It really
amazing.
is.
I'd like to talk about your wife for a second.
I love talking about my wife.
I mean,
Yeah.
what she's done in fishing is just an amazing thing.
She
I mean,
is.
here's a woman who's won
Yeah.
both the Del Brown and the March Merkin.
Yeah.
She's got 3 records, the 4-pound, 6-pound, and 8-pound permit record.
I'll add to those 2 tournament wins that they were both completely different. You know, one was like after she had been leading the March Merkin the year before, and Justin and Jose caught, I think it was 5 or 6 small fish on the last day and beat her, which is just a soul crushing thing to have happen, and handled it like a champ. The fishing got really tough the next year. The weather was bad. She had 1 shot in 4 days. I'm including the pre-fish day. They only saw 1 fish. And people have no idea how difficult that is. You have a close loss. And by the way, the year before, everyone's texting her like, oh, you're carrying the torch for women in fishing everywhere. Like, I can only imagine the amount of pressure that she's under. And then to have that like ripped away the last minute by the last team that checks in. And then the next year to go out and the weather's terrible, not see a fish for 4 days. And at 10:30 in the morning of day 4, you get 1 shot, and to do it perfectly and catch that fish. That's being good at this has way less to do with being able to make the cast physically than it does with being able to do it mentally. And that's a level of like mental ability that I think a lot of anglers like do not understand. And then she decides to fishes a couple more years. They get second, I think, a couple of times. And she's like, look, I'm, busy with the kid, and her and Violet are like best friends, and it's great. She's just going to take a break. She's writing now. And as sort of a last minute thing, fishes with Nick Labadie, and they fucking just drop the hammer on everyone. And they have good fishing, and she catches 2 a day.
6 permit.
6 permit. And so those are completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
One is like super relaxed, just, as they swim by, catching them. And then the other one is a grind. And that what that shows in terms of angling ability is a really high level of 2 different types of skill, which is really amazing.
With that being said, did you get out of the tournaments, allowing her to this is your time to fish these tournaments?
That was always our sort of agreement when we had a kid, that she would do the permits when we were going to split it up.
Mm-hmm.
She would do the permit stuff and I would do the tarpon stuff. And, I just had gotten to a point where doing that many tournaments didn't make sense.
Right.
And I felt like I'd done enough with the permit stuff and didn't really feel like working that hard. And look, there's a lot of people now who are fishing the permit tournaments who are just incredible. So it just didn't, it was a pretty natural thing for me to want to move on from that.
You're like the fishing royal family now.
Well, you should tell that to our daughter who believes that we are incapable of fishing, because every time we try to go catch these smart snapper near the house, she's like, you guys are terrible. We're throwing hot dogs at them.
So will you go out with Violet and throw the cast net?
No, there's a little ditch by our house and there's some snappers in there, and we are awful.
I would love to see you out there with your daughter.
Dude, it's great. She's got a purple rod that Esky built for her, and we've got like usually a little Tupperware with whatever meat is in there, and we're like feeding these snapper, and like they're just looking at the hook. It's just we have caught a few, but it's man, it feels like winning the Gold Cup every time we hook one of those things.
This is really funny.
That's great.
Hold on the permit tournament topic.
Yeah,
wasn't there like a limit on the size of the horsepower motor or something that got made a couple years ago?
No. So there were some people that got upset about the higher horsepower motors being used, increasing range. And there were some people that made some stickers that were pretty insulting to someone. And then I felt like it was an unfortunate way of handling not getting what you want. But there was some discussion about it among a relatively small number of people. And I think that's sort of been, we've gone past it,
yeah.
I think.
So was that like, was the mindset of like, that's not fair because no one else has, or was it a danger aspect, or what?
No, I think it was fairness, as I understood it. I mean, it got brought up, and I think the rules committee, brought it up to the Guides Association, it was that. And then there were also people that were upset about professional guides fishing as anglers. And in both of those cases, the answer was, we're going to let these things, continue.
Oh, gotcha.
And that's not uncommon. I just think the way it was handled was pretty immature. That like, if you don't get what you want, like I would never teach my daughter to do that.
Right.
If she was competitive and she's like, hey, I don't like the way this is going. And I would say, well, bring it up and, see if you can affect some change. And if it didn't happen and she said, well, what do you think I should do? I wouldn't say like, make a sticker and complain about it. I would say either get over it and continue to compete or don't do it.
Right.
But that's just me as a parent,
Yeah. And my mindset is like, wouldn't you want the best field possible? And if that is a professional guide on the bow, let it be.
The Merkin, when it was started by John Ain, and he made a decision that he wanted guides to be able to fish as anglers. So there is a historical, they talk about it in the Gold Cup a lot, tradition, there is a tradition aspect to that. And I think what's interesting about all this stuff, whether it's guides or the horsepower, no one seems to care until people start winning. And there was a team, Brandon and Mike, that have a fast boat and were using it, and they started winning. And then all of a sudden it became a problem. But, no one cared when the horsepower was getting bigger before, when those boats weren't being used by people that were winning. And there was a lot of, guides that fished as anglers in the tournament before people got mad about it. But all of a sudden, Jose starts winning with Justin, and then people get mad about it. And so I think a lot of the pushback is reflexive to whatever team is doing well. People are going to push back against that. And then sort of retroactively, like, sort out the reasoning behind it. But
So what do you think about the only allowing floating lines in the Holly? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm really careful with my personal opinions. Again, with
I know you don't fish the Holly, but
what I mean is like sort of, in being entitled versus qualified in an opinion. I don't fish that tournament, and I don't think that it's really my place to have I do have an opinion, but I also sort of feel like, no, okay. I don't think it matters. If you guys were interviewing someone about the March Merkin and their opinion about like the horsepower or guides or whatever, and they didn't fish that tournament and I was listening, I would be like, who are you?
Right.
And I don't fish that tournament. And I think there is a lot more at play to that discussion. Some of it's management, like how decisions get made in these tournaments. And it's just not my place to,
well, if
to have an opinion.
If the tournament is following the rules of the IGFA,
sure,
the spectrum why would you ban sinking lines when on really bad, terrible, rainy days, sometimes you have to dredge a channel with a sinking line?
Yeah, I mean, I think
and
that
it is within the confines of the IGFA.
And the Gold Cup has a provision in the rules that you can break the rod and still land the fish, which would be, you know, in contradiction to the IGFA rules. But again, I wasn't there for those decisions, and I just don't feel comfortable, like, you know, having without having. If I was in the tournament, I guarantee you, like in the Merkin, I have an opinion. I think the guys that were moaning about the horsepower are out of line, and the way they did it was wrong. And I think that having an opinion is fine, but the way they handled it was wrong. And I happen to agree or disagree with the underlying assumption they're making for a lot of different reasons. But I fished that tournament a long time. But as someone who doesn't fish the Holly, I just don't, you know, I mean, I don't think that I think I would be overlooking something that the people who were involved in that discussion aren't able to like flesh out. And if I wanted to get to the heart of what that was, I would talk to those people. And I know that I'm aware that I'm being kind of like political about this.
Yeah, that's fun.
But I just don't, you know, I just don't think it's my place.
Cool.
Yeah. Not publicly for sure.
So how did you guys catch 7 fish on the last day of the Merkin this year to win? I mean, that's an amazing feat. I mean, if you take a look at just the challenge of catching a permit, and people spend a lifetime to catch one, and you guys catch 7, I think it was a shot heard around the world, if you will. Man, I mean, I'm definitely not going to get into the specifics about what we were doing because you can't. I understand.
And because it's, you know, Ian's got to fish those tournaments, and I think there's a respect there for what goes into figuring that stuff out. But in terms of like how we got there, I think that's team building and fishing as a team and being willing to work hard and try to figure stuff out. And then as far as it happening, I mean, I'm not built for stuff like that. Like I'm the kind of person who like, I'm going to like the Gold Cup, like it's right in my sort of like wheelhouse, you know, like we're going to grind and we're going to just, you know, barely pull it off in tough weather, you know,
you're going to bleed the whole way.
Yeah, exactly. And to just like fish 3 days. So the pre-fish day 1, day 2, and be around obviously a fair number of fish. And then on the last day, like figure it out and have it work that way is not like, I have no point of reference for that experience. And I mean, I'll say this, I have like a thing where I think there's a very real difference between acting humble and being humble. And I think I for whatever my effort is worth, I try to focus it toward actually being humble. And so when something like that happens, like I remember at the check-in, there was a guy who was like, fuck yeah. And I'm like, why is this guy yelling at me? And that's just like, we were going under Kauki channel and I'm like, or Boca Chica channel. And I'm like, I feel like I'm going to throw up, you know, I'm like nervous. And like, my reaction to that is not like, yeah, my reaction is like, oh, you know?
Wow.
And so, I mean, look, it was incredible. I mean, we caught like one at 11:15 and then we lost one at like noon. And at that point I'm like, okay, like that's it. Like on a day when you need to come back, you don't lose a permit.
Right.
And then at 1:15, we caught one. And then I think we did a pass through this, you know, long flat we were fishing and we caught 3 and they were separated by like 45 minutes. And at one point it was surreal. We like lost track of how many we had and we had to go back through the timestamps and count. And so we had 5 fish and the line's out at 4:30. We go back to the beginning and it's like, I think 4:06 and Ian hops up on the platform. We see like a pair of fish, throw at him and hook one. And I'm just like, fuck. And when Ian and I are fighting a fish, we don't really talk. So we just kind of, you know, land the thing and take the pictures and whatever. And he idles back No, he did not. He just started pulling, and we're still on the flat. And, I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, okay, it's, it was like 4:15 or something. And he pulls for 5 minutes, and he's like, I saw a fish tail like 100 yards away. And I'm like, well, good for you. That's cool. There's a lot of fish around. And he starts pulling the boat, and like the boat's like basically planing. I'm like, man, there's no way. Like, I'm timing it in my head. I'm like, okay, we have 7 minutes. Like I know generally where he saw the fish. Like, there's no way. And so we get down there, and I'm like the whole time the rod's up, so I'm like looking for, like when the time comes, we'll be ready to, point the rod. And I feel him like rip the bow around. And I'm like, well, I guess we must be, near the shot. And I see this like little group of fish, and I throw the fly in there, and I hook one, and all I hear is he goes, it's 4:29 in 30 seconds. And I'm like, and I was like, yeah, I know. We haven't heard the lines out alarm. We set an alarm. So if you hear it, that's usually my cue. If we're in the middle of a shot, you hear the line, you hear the alarm, you stop. And he's pulled all of these fish down. And I remember saying to him, like, if you want, I'm just trying to like give him a break because it's been a long day for him pulling after these fish. And I was like, if you want, you could start the motor, like just trying to be helpful. Like, I guess it doesn't matter at this point. Like, if we lose this fish, who cares? And as soon as I said it, I was like, never mind. I know you're going to pull this fish down.
Yeah.
And he did. It was just really, really cool. And that tournament, like the March Merkin specifically, is such a big deal to me. Like it's a big deal for the Lower Keys. It's a big deal for the Guides Association who runs the tournament. It's their major fundraiser. That has always been like the Gold Cup of Key West. And for it to work out that way was like, more than I could ever hope for.
How cool was it that Steve Huff and Carl Hassan was in the field too when you did that?
It was like, I remember when Carl called me and said he wanted to do the tournament. I was like, well, maybe, and I talked to Kat about it. I was like, it might be fun for me to do it again. She's like, oh yeah, sure. But like, honestly, in my mind, I'm like, I just hope I catch one. Like I did not have an expectation of, winning.
Right.
Not that I ever do, but it was really cool. Yeah. It's awesome.
It's really big. Let me ask you about being able to do what you did. How much is it the fly and or the movement of the fly?
I believe that with fishing, these fish are hyper aware of not everything all at once, right? Like sometimes it's not color. Sometimes it's not the action. Sometimes it's not the weight. Sometimes it's not, but it could be any one of those things. So of the things, like angle, retrieve, I think there are times when these fish have a really clear preference for that thing. And if you can figure that out, it will, and you have enough, provided you have enough targets, it'll work really well. And so I think, there's stuff that I can't explain. Like when I'm tarpon fishing, where I'm like two-handing a fly versus single-hand stripping. And they prefer one or the other. It's not always the same one. I can't explain that. I can try. I can like come up with an idea.
Sure.
But that's not, I'm just making stuff up. And so I think with permit, we were trying a whole bunch of different stuff, and all of a sudden we kind of stumbled across something that was working, and we just did it 7 times. I know that sounds kind of like I'm avoiding the question. Because I am.
But I know that a lot of people like, Nat Ragland came up with the mow, and Bob Branham. I will say this, and not to cut you off, but when I was fishing with John, we were doing something hyper specific.
And
You're talking about John O'Hearn.
yeah, we were throwing the strong arm. We were throwing flies that were really light, pretty bright, and we were only doing that. And other guys were fishing flies that were heavier, and they would, throw them right next to the fish, and they would drop fast. Joe Scrimbellos was doing some of that. That's like a lot of what Steve and Del were doing. And those guys caught a lot of fish. There were many years where they won. And I think my belief is what matters more than the system specific is executing it really consistently. Because if you take 10 shots, right? And, 2 of them are tailing, the strong arm's going to, be lighter and sort of favor those scenarios. But the deeper fish are going to favor the heavier fly. So you're going to get some situations that favor your approach, no matter what your approach is. But what's more important than the approach itself is being able to execute it, consistently. And I think these kind of everyone wants that answer where it's like, do this, but that might not be what works. And let's say it's a strong arm and I say, okay, we want a really light fly and you want to throw it pretty far away from the fish and let them swim into it. If the fish don't want that, you're doomed. And you've built it up in your head that that's the thing you want to do.
But do you ever think we just have to find the right fish?
Yeah.
I think about that tarpon fishing sometimes, you're getting all these refusals and it's like, well, we just have to wait for the right fish to come along.
I think part of my conceit as an angler is I believe that if I don't get a bite, it's because I did something wrong.
Yeah, me too.
And I believe so strongly in the possibility of hooking them that when I don't, I just blame no one but myself.
I'm the same way, but in the reality, it's I feel like I should be able to catch every high, slow sliding fish that's coming down the flat.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard not to take it personal.
Right.
I'm not on your guys' caliber, but I feel like if you have so much confidence in a fly, you've caught a lot of tarpon on that fly, you've caught a lot of tarpon on that spot, the same exact scenario, which you've done over and over again, and you have that sliding fish and you throw it in there and you lead him a lot and he comes up and just totally refuses it. I'm always like, we just got to find the right fish. That's me. I understand what you guys are saying.
But let me ask you this. Let's say you are you're on the ocean and you get 22 shots.
Okay.
And at the end of that day, you're like, man, those fish were snappy. We got them today. How many bites did you get?
22 shots?
Yeah.
If they were snappy,
I'd first say 8. I never say that they're snappy or that I don't apply to that. I guess my point is what's a great day? 22 shots?
Yeah.
What's a good day?
Yeah.
22 shots. I don't know,
that's not a ton of shots.
I'd bites.
Say 8.
Okay, 6 to 8 bites. So that's less than 50%. So, on a per shot basis, if a fish refuses it, they could still be really, really into it.
But that question there's so many layers to that question. It depends on where you are in the ocean.
Is it dirty water? Is it clear and calm?
Because there's some spots where if I get one bite with 22 shots,
there's also about the other day I was fishing with Ian and we found a bunch of fish that we found this enormous number of tarpon. It was super calm. We hadn't found much elsewhere. And it's well, this is the best thing that we've got going. There's a ton of fish. There were so many fish there. And I'm so frustrated with myself because I can't get one of them to bite. We're trying different stuff. We're trying this, we're trying that. And some of that is maybe the fish, but in a tournament, I don't think that way. I'm not oh, these fish suck.
Yeah.
I'm I just try to turn it inward on myself and say I'm not smart enough to figure out what they want, or I'm not good enough to give it to them. The problem is me. It's always me.
But also too, it's not fair because sometimes these fish that are coming in a big school and they're traveling and you're near a big moon.
Yeah.
They have other things on their mind.
But look, I think this goes back to the conversation about the horsepower and the Merkin. If we're pursuing perfect fairness, then we're going to come up short.
Right.
Things like life's not fair, fish aren't fair. I can always look at someone else and say, oh, that person has an advantage. they've got, I'm sure people say that about me. Oh, you live in the Keys, you get to fish all the time. Like I can always externalize the reasons for my lack of success and look at someone else and be like, well, that's why they're doing well. And if I had that, but that's not how I like choose to view the world. And that's not how I choose to like interact with like what I want to do. It's always something that I feel like I can do better. And if I can't, it just means that I'm not smart enough yet
but I think that's the mindset of most champions in any sport.
Yeah. I mean, look, the older I get, the more I notice that when people complain, and like most of what I hear from them is a complaint about whatever, politics, fishing, whatever, like then I just kind of know that's where their attention is. Mm-hmm. And look, if I walk around thinking that the world is unfair, guess what? The world's going to be unfair. If I walk around thinking like, why this, why me, why you, why not me, then
you're a loser. I wouldn't say total loser, but look, I mean,
well, it's a lot harder to win.
Yeah, for sure. And I was talking to your wife about the level of intensity, and she was saying, look, you have to be intense. You have to be 1,000% in to do something well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're not having any fun, because the harder you push, the more successful you're going to be and the more fun you're going to have.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, we have to take it real personal and understand what we're doing to not make it work. Yeah. Like we were like this last week or so, we were having these a lot of bites on the worm fly. Like 2 days ago, we had 8 bites. We did not catch a fish.
I think we stuck. We
jumped one. So it was interesting the way they were biting the fly. Then if we used a shrimp fly, it felt like the fish were grabbing it much differently. Yeah. Like they wanted to eat it and just.
I also think, I was telling my dad, I don't know, I have no numerical data to prove this, but when I'm single hand stripping, I have a better bite to hookup ratio. For whatever reason, I don't know if that's because of the pause when I'm bumping, they eat it and I'm paused. I don't know what it is, but with the 2-hand strip, even when it's so hard when they open their mouth to do nothing.
I bet if you guys could, I'm sure you have better things to do, but if you're bored, start a fly at a certain location and measure off 20 feet, right? And you stand there as an angler, close your eyes. So you're not watching it. And you time how long it takes that fly to travel from point A to point B 20 feet away. Mm-hmm. And I bet if you plug that in, you'd learn what the difference in speed was, and that might have something to do with it. Like, because one of those flies, I bet, is moving either faster or slower than the other.
100%.
And so I bet that's part of it. I think part of it is the way they eat. I listened to the conversation you guys had with, was it Brian DePerrick? Yeah. About like, why do they hook, why you hook them here? I was going to ask you that. I mean, I think there's so much going on, like sort of, in terms of the hydrodynamics of a fish opening its mouth and displacing, this like opening up its mouth to a void that's then filled by water. And then, like you said, you're attached to the fly. The angle of I think a lot of that stuff is just like, and there was an example that I thought about when I was listening to that, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like, if you do something a certain way most of the time, like when I'm tying biminis, I always get a cut like in the same part of my hand. And it's like, I've just been tying a bunch right there. And it's like, well, why is that? Like you just do something a bunch of times, it's going to work. There's so many things that are the same, and the fish are usually, it might have to do with the fact that, most of the angles that we're taking with fish are, as a right-handed caster, they're a certain way, and the way pelicans turn. There's just too many things. I think like coming up with an idea about why is less important than just accepting it.
Yeah, but it's fun, Nathaniel. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Okay? It is fun.
But I think it's because of their underbite. They have a massive underbite. That bottom jaw comes out way over his top jaw. So the first thing that the worm's or a fly's gonna come in contact with if he doesn't turn is that upper lip.
Yeah, but the question then is, why does it turn? I mean,
why does the hook turn over?
Yeah, but
correct.
See, the thing about it is contact with which jaw first. Like that's a more linear problem.
Right.
But I mean, the question is, why does the fly invert? And the answer is, it is for whatever reason unencumbered by its keel. The bend of the hook, which will always orient it hook point down. And so the answer there is water movement. So as these things are pulled into their mouth, that water is moving, and it's like putting a fly in a washing machine.
Yeah.
But
like
it's the same kind of washing machine, the same cycle for a brief period of time every time. And I think it could just be that type of thing. But I also don't, like, I was listening to you guys, like, we don't hook them, I don't think, in the top lip. I mean, it's usually the top, but it's never the button. Rare that it's the center. It's usually.
But it's around that top.
But it's always like here.
Yeah.
It's amazing how some days you catch everything, every fish that bites your bug, and the next day it's like.
Yeah.
But I was wondering yesterday when we were talking, we did have one bite and caught one yesterday, and it's like we didn't do anything different.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of luck involved with this stuff, right?
No, there is. I mean, you take, let's say in a tournament, you get 20 bites and you grab 8 of them. If you take that number 20 and you say, great. Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, like you have great averages, it's 40%, and that's a good week, no question. But let's just say you plug it into a little spreadsheet and you say, okay, of those 20 fish, 6 are weight fish and 14 are releases. And you just, every time you press the button, you get another random distribution of which 8 are weights and how many of the 8 are weights and how many of the 8 are releases. You could press that button, probably a couple dozen times before you got the same answer. And just in terms of distribution of how many of your 8 are weights and how many of your 8 are releases. Mm-hmm. And so that is something where like luck does factor in. Mm-hmm. Now look, you can do a lot to mitigate that. You can be around bigger fish. So now maybe of your 20, maybe 16 are weights. Mm-hmm. And now that changes. But at the end of the day, there's still like a random distribution of that.
Sure. Do you look for bigger fish in special areas during tournaments when you need weight fish? Because obviously there are areas that certain basins just hold bigger fish.
Yeah, I think, of course you're looking for bigger fish in the Gold Cup.
Because it's interesting on the ocean. I have not seen very many big fish on the ocean this year.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. It's hard to catch 100-pound fish on the ocean.
Down here.
Yeah. There's places where I think there's more of them, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, the fish on the ocean are smaller on average than in other places. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. But there's more of them. So, that's why people go there.
I'm thinking here, if I were in the Gold Cup in this day and age.
As a guide.
I'm thinking that if you can catch 5 weight fish, you got a great chance of winning. So why not just fish basins where we know these big fish live?
But I don't think it's that simple.
I think
if you know of a basin where you can go catch 5,
there's a bunch of basins around Isla Mirada that hold real big fish.
Yeah, but a lot of those places by June are no longer functioning. There's not as many fish there, and a lot of times those fish are nearly impossible.
Yeah,
that's an obvious mindset. And so if it was that easy,
that's my point.
There'd be a lot of boats.
Absolutely, for sure. But it's not. It's not like. Here's another way. Like what I would do, and this is my like sort of version of that, is like, listen, these fish feed at night, right? So lines in is at like 6 a.m. Like I would dredge a weight a day in the morning.
Absolutely.
Of course, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't just like conjure a basin that's full of, I think that's what you guys were doing.
Well, before we even got down to the Lower Keys, we would always stop and fish around Isla Mirada.
Right. Yeah. Dredge.
That first hour and a half.
But if you can
not only dredging, there's a lot of fish that are looping and rolling around those edges.
Yeah, but that's it's same sort of
casting
thing.
The rollers, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think that's like, that sounds great. I mean, if I could get a bite an hour dredging in the Gold Cup, sure, why wouldn't I do that?
That's not
I'm in
gonna
the
happen,
same.
though.
I'm in the same mindset. As you.
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up doing that for stripers. Like
Yeah.
I would be so content to just sit there and fire cast after cast, and I would, I could cast far and I could get it out there and hook them and fight, and absolutely get 8 bites a day. It'd be awesome. But these fish now are so difficult and so hard that landing one feels like a minor miracle.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's transition into your casting and what you're doing with the web seminar and what you got going on with that.
So I've been teaching for a while, and I've been, I started teaching casting for free, and then it was, just charging $20 and then $40, and I spent a really long time teaching, and it's become like I stay really busy with it. And the thing that I'm working on is taking everything that I teach and putting it into like basically a library of videos about topics. And I finally gotten to a point where it's pretty automatic. Like if you asked me, like, how do you cast into the wind? I kind of have like a little,
you can lead someone into that direction.
For that.
Yeah, right.
And so we've been filming now for, I think, 4 days. We've got another 3 or 4 days left to film. And it's going to be a subscription where you can, basically buy access for a year or something like that. My goal is to make it like, maybe a little bit more than what I charge an hour for this stuff. So it's not a, super premium price. And really try to get that out into the world and get some good information out there about casting. I mean, there's so much misinformation. It drives me crazy. And I'm sure the guy who's doing all the video he like loves when I get fired up, but I'm like, man, some people are going to be pissed, but I'm excited about it. And it's a big task. And why I'm doing it in the middle of tarpon season, I have no idea, but we're working on it.
Do you speak much with Ed Jarowski by chance?
I don't.
About casting?
No.
Because Ed was he and Lefty, wrote all those books and did all those videos. And he has dedicated his life to casting.
Yeah.
An unbelievable, scientist, if you will, with the casting and the power bands and stopping the rod. I used to always have lunch with Ed and Lefty at the trade shows.
Sure.
And I was just wondering if you ever spoke
I haven't.
with him.
No, I've seen some of his stuff, but I've never met him in person.
So who have you looked up to in the casting world? Like the Ray Jeffs or who? Man. Like who?
I mean, I think
you learn a lot from, or was it all on your own?
Well, there's some difficulty in that because I'm largely self-taught as a caster, but I'm also self-taught as a teacher. And I think there is a ton of like systemic misinformation that's made its way into like contemporary casting. And I've consumed like more media than probably is healthy about like casting. And a lot of times I'll see something that's really, really helpful and really like genuinely awesome. But then that's usually
an example of that.
There was a guy that I was watching, and I wish I could remember his name, but he was talking about distance casting, and he was talking about using the space in front of your body. And I thought that was just such a brilliant way of putting it. And I use that now to describe not just using the space in front of your body, but using the space behind your body, thinking about pulling instead of just pushing on a cast. But it was just a brilliant way to put it. But there's then you see something and you'll be watching that, and that person or someone else will say, want to keep a book between your arm and your rib cage, which is the height of madness. I mean, if you have a book behind here, and you're basically swinging your hand's moving in a curve. I mean, and your hand needs to move in a straight line.
Have you ever heard of the critical angle?
Mm-mm.
So Jarowski talks about the critical angle in a rod. And it's also with fish fighting. So if you take the rod back and forth here, your tight loop is formed by stopping the rod fairly high.
Yeah,
and then
depending on how much it bends.
And then you drift back, right? So when the rod gets flat behind you, you can pull that rod, which is much more powerful than stopping the rod high and pushing the rod tip here, right? So he always talks about the critical angle.
Yeah.
Also, when you stop forward, when you come back, you pull. You're so much more powerful
using
in
the
pulling.
space in front. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like drawing a bow.
Yeah. So the critical angle in fighting fish is also having a relatively straight rod here.
Yeah.
And not fishing with a high rod
I
tip.
think an easier way to conceptualize that is that, there's only two ways that we're informing the line, right? The first one is your hand moving in a straight line. And then the other one is the rotation of the rod. And those two things need to be used together to form your cast. And if you don't use the track, and you just use the rotation of the rod, your cast is going to top out at about 60 or 70 feet.
Right.
And you're never going to be able to get past that.
So you're using critical angle.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know.
To.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest misconception in casting? You'd say off the top of your head.
Bro. I think the biggest, okay, so I'll give you one example. So this whole business of how much line you have out to start when you're casting. Like you want to have a rod length of line plus your leader. And
Yeah,
your
you
first
don't do
move.
that.
Well, and so here's why. And I've thought about this. And I remember, in our first podcast, we were talking about how much line you have out. And I kind of did a deep dive on that, like what's happening there. So if you're standing on the bow of the boat, let's say you have, forget about how much line you have out of your rod tip, but from the tip of the rod, down through the rod, into your hand, and down to the ground behind you, all that line has weight, 17 or 18 feet of line that gravity is pulling down from the tip of the rod. So even if you have 9 feet of line out of the rod tip, what are you going to take that 9 feet, throw it hard enough to pick up 18 feet and have it go up through the rod and out? That the physics don't support that we're actually casting there. What we're doing is we're letting lines slip. And that's why people advocate this circular movement of the rod. Because as soon as you move it circularly, now you're pulling the rod down the line. You're not taking that 9 feet and shooting it. You're actually just letting lines slip. And so as soon as we understand that, we can now, like, as soon as we start talking about this dimension of line, like the weight of the line through the rod down to the ground, you just imagine like a point up here, and you've got 17 feet down here and 9 feet here. How hard are you going to have to throw that 9 feet to get that 17 feet to leave the ground and then pick up more behind it? It's madness. So the idea is, same thing in golf. When we're putting, we're rolling the ball. We're not hitting the ball off of the ground and it landing. So our putting is a different physical movement. The physics are different. One, we're pushing the ball, we're rolling it. The other, we're lifting it off the ground. So all the talk about the ready position, how much line you have out to load the rod, people talk about loading the rod. It's not loading the rod they're feeling. What they're feeling when they go, the rod's finally loaded. They're not feeling that the rod is bent. You can load the rod with 4 feet of line out. If you pinch the line to the cork, it has nothing to do with the rod and the weight of the line. What happens is you get more weight out than you have through the rod to the ground. And you reach this point where you're like, it feels good. Mm-hmm. It feels like the rod, and we report this as feeling the rod load. That's not what's happening. When you guys are out fishing, take a rod, take 5 feet of line, pinch the line on the cork, and just make a little short cast. You will see the rod flex, you'll feel it load, you'll feel it unload. And then you start trying to shoot that line and it falls apart and it feels like you're just helpless because there's more weight there. So formalizing that and understanding that what's happening is that we're letting lines slip instead of shooting line, all of a sudden you have this moment where you're like, wow, that makes sense.
Well, I think, for me personally,
sure,
if I have 9 feet of fly line off my rod tip and I move it back, already, sure, I'm going to let it slip when I come back.
No, you're letting it slip when you come forward. Your left hand is open.
Let's just say my first move is this way.
Yeah.
I can let it slip that way.
Sure.
To the backside.
Yeah.
But that 9 feet helps that rod bend a little bit, and it gives that rod a little bit more energy the more that tip is bent when I stop that rod.
But why does the rod need energy? Are you shooting? What are you doing with that energy? You're sending the 9 feet.
That 9 feet helps that back cast, helps allow me to let it slip even a little bit further. If I take that, say, 12 foot of leader off my rod tip, and I go like this, the rod's not going to bend nearly as much as if I have 9 feet of fly line.
Right. But what I'm saying is that it's a counter movement. What I'm saying is not that you're taking that line and sending it behind you, and then that's pulling the line out. What I'm saying is you send the line behind you, and as it's traveling behind you, you're traveling the rod down the line. That's the slip. So and by the way, you are already doing this for sure, because the physics dictate that you can't take 9 feet and send it out and have it pull any line out. So what you're doing by moving it circularly is you're opening up your left hand and you're coming tight to the line here, sending it in front, and you're drawing the rod back, because that's the only way you can get line out. And that's why people want that circular movement, because it basically maintains tension. And you know what you don't do on a circular cast? You don't pause. So on our first 20, I teach casting inside of 20 feet as a completely different thing than outside of 20 feet, because the physics are different. And so once you stop pausing on your early casts and you bring the rod back, and as soon as the rod's back, you bring it forward, you flex the rod forward and you bring it back, all of a sudden you're getting line out super easy. It's easier for me to teach someone who's never picked up a fly rod. Hold the rod, make a circle with your left hand, the line goes through the left hand, hold the rod, and go back and forward. You get 9, 10, 15 feet of line out in a second. What's really hard to teach people is hold the line in your right hand and the rod, have a rod length or more of line, hold the thing, bring the rod low and to the side, let go of the fly at the exact right time. Now switch your hands, hold this. And that's it's just so easy. Go like that. Then your left hand is basically open virtually the whole time. But if we think about it and we understand it as a different movement, then all of a sudden it makes sense. Because there's no way that we're taking 9 feet of line against 18 feet through the rod and throwing that 9 feet hard enough to lift up that line. It's just a different thing.
Well, I think you have to build speed.
Yeah.
And the more speed you build, the more weight you have.
Sure.
Then it's going to shoot 80 feet or 90 feet of line.
Once you get past that critical point where you have more out than in, it all changes. Now we're casting. But inside of that, that sort of weight differential, when we have less weight outside of the rod tip than we have down to the ground, everything is just of a different type, because there's more weight, gravity pulling down on my side of the rod than there is going that way outside.
Why does the weight via the fly line on the deck have anything to do with, I don't understand that.
So imagine you're standing there, right? And you make a back cast and you press pause.
Yeah.
Right? From the tip of the rod down through the rod.
Yeah.
There's 9 feet of line.
Right.
And so then between the bottom of the rod and your hand is another couple of feet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's 6 feet of line from your hand down, in a curve down to the ground. So if you erase you and the rod, and all you've got is a tip top guide,
mm-hmm.
you've got 4 feet of line hanging out of the rod tip, and then you've got 18 feet of line that's down to the ground. And that weight, that 18 feet has weight. Gravity is pulling it down. So if we're taking that 4 or 9 feet and we're trying to throw it and lift that line up, there's not enough weight.
I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about the weight of the line on the deck, and I was like, that's weightless.
Right, no, it is weightless.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, this is the dimension that's like under talked about, is from the deck to the tip of the rod. We always talk about how much weight there is outside of the rod tip, and this is a great example of that. We're talking about the difference between 9 feet versus 15 feet and how important and critical that weight is. But that's one side of a scale. And the other side of that scale is on the back side of the rod tip, through the rod down to the ground. We never talk about that weight. But that weight is so critical for what's happening when we're casting.
Okay, you lost me there for a little bit, but now I understand. So you can cast as quickly with 12 feet with just 12 feet a leader outside your rod tip.
Yes.
In comparison to 20 feet of fly line outside the rod tip, you can cast.
No. What I'm saying is it's easier for me to start with an inch of fly line than it is with 9 feet of fly line. Because, if we had a rod right here, I could show you guys. We can go downstairs and I'll show you. And as soon as you guys see it, you'll be like, I get it. Like, we're taking the weight. We should go get a fly rod right now. We're taking the weight that's outside of the rod tip.
No, I get it now.
And we're trying to throw that, right? So we've got 18 feet of line from the tip down to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to take 9 feet and throw that 9 feet hard enough to lift that 18 feet up, which, and by the way, as soon as it lifts up, there's more behind it that's no longer weightless. It's being picked off.
You're
the
not
deck.
trying to throw the whole 18 feet. You're trying to slide 2 feet,
Slide
and
it.
then you jump, and then,
But
you shoot it.
I guarantee you're already doing this. When you start with 9 feet of line, you're already not pausing and not shooting. Your cast looks different. I've watched everyone does this because the physics I'm not writing these rules. There's just less weight on the far side of the tip than there is on the back side. So we have to use it differently. So in terms of the biggest source of misinformation, it's the idea that these rods like load at a certain point, or that that we need to, because I think honestly, like we're treating people like we're giving them one golf swing and we wonder why they can't putt. And like, I think everyone who's been doing this a while is doing this. They're letting lines slip. They just aren't kind of not really aware of what's happening and why. And then we're watching people like flail on the putting green. And I really have a problem when people treat like people who are beginning in this sport like they're not capable of understanding. Like it just is what it is. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think anyone says to someone who's picking up golf, like, don't tell them about putting. They can't handle it. It's a different thing of the ball. Like we don't want to bring that up.
You know, it's interesting you say this.
One more thing. So in my mind, if I want to cast 70 feet and I start with 12 feet of fly line out of the rod, just in my mind, I would say that I could get to 70 feet quicker than if I start with no fly line out of the rod. And you're saying that's not true.
I'm saying that if you're holding the fly, now look, if you have the 12 feet in front of you, that's different, right? Because you can.
Right.
But if you're holding the fly, because what I can do with an inch of fly line, I have an inch of fly line out, and you've got 12 feet of fly line, and you're holding the fly. Mm-hmm. What you're going to do is you're going to do this and that, and you're going to extend that 12 feet in front of you. Mm-hmm. And during the time that you do that, this circular movement, which by the way, I don't think it's healthy that we're going to try to get our body to move in a straight line, and the first thing we're going to do is move in a curve. But that notwithstanding, I'm just going to take the rod, and my left hand is going to be basically open, and I'm going to go back and forward. And in that time that you're doing this, I'm doing this, and I'm going to get that 12 feet, and I'm going to be right there with you.
So when that left hand is open, when you do this, the line's sliding out of that left hand.
Because I'm not changing the angle of the rod. I'm bringing it back. I'm not hauling. I'm just basically letting lines slip. Yeah.
Every time I try to do that, because I've seen you before.
I could show you.
I feel like I got
Andy, I could show you in 30 seconds. You are like, given your, like, the only thing about this conversation that I wish is that I could just show you and you'd be like, I get it. Because you're a physical guy. You're like an athlete and you need to see something for sure. And I'm trying to explain it, you know, like it's a weights and measures thing. And it's a very, but this is why I'm doing the casting thing, is that this is the kind of thing you're going to be able to watch and be like, oh, I get it. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Like that's my job, right? Is to explain this stuff in a way that makes sense and like defend this stuff. Like I don't, and the physics in my mind are really supportive of it being different, right? Like we're not taking 9 feet of line, throwing it hard enough to shoot all that line.
No, for sure not.
Through the rod. So we are doing something different. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if we know what it is or we don't, we're definitely doing something different. And that's why we all have different ways of, discussing. But for me as an instructor, it's like, it's maddening that I watch these videos and guys are like, yeah, you want to have all this line, you move in a circle and you pluck it out of your hand on your back. Like that is such a more difficult thing to do than just, leaving your left hand mostly open. So anyway, I think inside of 20 feet, it's a different game.
Jerry Seam used to always teach about stopping the rod and drifting back and up.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah. He had a pretty sort of, downward trajectory. Yeah.
The angle was high in the back and low in the front.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about getting into distance competitions?
I mean, briefly, but that's a whole different world, man. That stuff those rods are so specialized
but I can see you doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I
well
think
you cast.
It would be super interesting. I think that the next rabbit hole for me is probably teaching more than that. But it's yeah, I mean, that's like a very cool. What is Ray Jeff's record? 243, I think, is his
I have
distance,
no idea.
single hand distance.
Oh my
But those rods they're using like specially built by Steve, I think. These specially built like super stiff rods, and they're all, shooting heads. So lead core and then a monofilament running line. And it's, it's a very different game. And my casting teaching is really focused around like functional stuff. I always tell my students, like, it needs to be able to withstand stress. Like, we need to build the system so that it can be kind of flexed. And I think that distance casting stuff is super like precise. Cause you're looking for one really good cast, and that's less interest. Like, I think consistency is more important to me than like, occasional excellence, but.
Yeah, that's a completely different game.
For sure.
It's like the long drive hitters, and when you see how far guys are like the world champion, they're trying to hit at 450, they might only get one ball in the grid.
Yeah.
So when is this going to be done? Where can people find your videos?
I mean, the fall, we're going to finish it up probably around September.
Okay.
I mean, it's, we're shooting all of the modules now, and, look, I'm really excited about it. I think it's probably going to be a total failure, but, I believe in what I'm doing, and I think the stuff holds up. Like, what I love about casting and teaching more than anything is when someone says, that's not what I think. That's not what I've heard. And I'm like, let me show you. Like, let me show you how this works. And like, when you watch someone and they're like, I get it. It makes sense. That's like such a rewarding, like, my favorite people are the people who are like, I don't think you can help me. And I'm like, because that's a challenge, right? Like, sometimes I'll get people who are like, oh, I know you could help me. It's going to be great. And you kind of feel like no matter what you did, they'd be like, that's amazing, But when someone approaches it with like a healthy amount of skepticism and is like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know what that's not what I've heard. Hang on a second. Because then like, that's my job,
right,
is to defend that and prove it, and I think that stuff is like really, really fun and interesting. Plus, like, people are fun and cool, and you get to watch people, get better at something.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Before we move on, I got one quick question.
Yeah.
If you don't have fly line out of the tip of your rod, how do you water load, or do you never water load?
You don't water load. The thing about water loading,
we don't water load.
I would just ask
Very
you,
rarely
on a
do we,
really windy day.
So
sometimes you water load, and you go to your fish.
I used to do it all the time because it wasn't good enough to just hold the
Yeah,
line.
I mean, so water loading is like a different thing. I mean, you're creating more tension on the line to bend the rod more.
Right.
But again, the whole basis of this thing is the idea that we've got a scale, right? Which is the tip of the rod. And on one side of that, if we have less weight than on the other, and what I mean by that is just the line coming down to the ground, we have to use a different physical property,
I
and
understand
so it doesn't matter. Like, if I take 9 feet of line and I throw it, it's not going to pick up 18 feet of line. If I throw it harder,
it just gets us started.
It's gonna, the harder you throw it, right, the more it's going to maybe move that 18 feet of line. The problem is that 9 feet of line is going to straighten out so quick. It's going to bounce back. So water loading is helpful if you're just trying to walk the line out if it's that windy. But really, I think generally it's not like
needed.
I just don't think it helps anything.
Right.
Might make you feel better, but it's not a real like
because I see
solution
so many
to the problem.
people. Well, let's just say somebody who's not really as experienced as a caster.
Sure.
They're trout fishermen. They come now. It's blowing 20. They're in the ocean. The more I see them false cast, the more trouble they get into. So water loading for me with the people that I fished with before, I put in the water, throw it another 15 feet, wait for your fish, now go to your fish.
It also gives you a point of reference, and it lets you kind of like, I mean, the utility of it, what you're describing is it lets someone wait mid-cast. They don't have to do all the pre-work. They get out 30 feet of line, and then they wait and wait and wait because, the chances of them getting there might be tough. But it's it's sort of like training wheels on a bike.
But it's needed at times.
Yeah,
for
but
some
not
people.
as long. I mean, you don't want to be, I think at a certain point, it's like some of these fly lines that have all the weight right toward the tip, they make it easier for the first 20 feet or 30 feet. because they get more mass out. So that scale tips earlier.
Right.
But then they make it harder for people outside of 50 feet. And again, I have a problem with something that makes it harder for people. This sport is difficult. It's not easy, but I think it's a major disservice to anglers in the sport if we make something as a piece of equipment or as a solution to a problem that kind of solves the problem in one way, but then creates a whole other set of issues later. Mm-hmm. I would rather, like, if it were me that was learning or teaching, I would rather just be like, look, this is what it is. You know, it just is what it is. I mean, I just don't think that we should be dumbing it down for people. I think if you treat people like they're not capable of handling something, then they won't be. So that's just what I think.
All right, we're going to end this with some questions people wrote in on Instagram, the old Instagram. Oh. And first question is from Danny DLV. He says, what does your current tarpon leader look like, and how has it changed over the last number of years?
Hasn't changed a lot. It's like 12 feet of 60-pound fluorocarbon, and then maybe like a foot or two of 50-pound fluorocarbon. Then I tie the doubled part of the bimini like close to that 50-pound using a blood knot. So it's not an improved blood knot because you're tying it with the furl. And then my class and then my shock. So bimini's on both sides of the shock and then the cobra.
Interesting. So most of the length comes from the first 12 feet.
Yeah, the butt section's that's the part that turns it over. Yeah.
It's very different than ours.
That's probably why you guys aren't catching that many fish. Yeah.
Julian Tisdale asks, how do you target large fish in oceanside groups?
Oh, I don't think I can.
I don't know what she's asking. Like, are you picking the bigger fish out of strings? Is that what she's asking?
I'm not sure. If there's a group of fish and there's one fish that's clearly bigger in that group, yeah, sure, I'm gonna try to, throw it to it. But I mean, I don't. If there's one that's really high, you always throw at that one for sure. But it's very often the case that the bigger fish are the ones that are in the least likely. It's always like the 40-pounder that's swimming up there, like. It's 2 inches below the surface.
Yeah.
But
Nathaniel Outlaw asks, when targeting permit just cruising versus feeding, how does your fly and retrieve change?
I mean, I would just say maybe the fly, I don't know that the fly would be any different. Whatever fly I'm fishing, I would throw it farther away for a fish that's cruising, and then closer to a fish that's feeding. That's just taking a lead on a fish that's a little more aware.
And your retrieve would be similar, if not?
Yeah, it would be the same. I mean, I would probably, you're looking to sort of generate interest on the traveling fish rather than capitalize on existing interest. So maybe start out a little slower, but just depends on what you're fishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Nicholas Vanger asks, any advice for aspiring guides?
So my sort of like go-to piece of advice for people that want to like guide in the Keys, and I can't speak to anywhere else. Learn to rig properly. Like that's an easy cheat code, right? Every good guide, you look at their knots and they're all good looking. If you get your rigging set, it's like magic. Like people automatically like you have a leg up. But I think, look, my feeling about this is if you're going to guide in the Keys, you need to spend some time fishing before you start guiding. And the reason for that is you're asking people to pay you nowadays almost $1,000 or $1,000 to go fishing for a day. And you better be sure that you are able to provide the experience to those people that they're paying for. And there's a difference between taking your buddy out and catching a couple of tarpon, or your friend who's a guide and catching a permit, and taking someone who is not good at fishing to those same experiences. And so I think if you are at a point in your fishing where you can get in a boat and take someone out there and have a reasonable expectation of giving them an opportunity to catch these fish and understand that that person is not good at fishing, that's probably when you're ready to guide, but that is not, just because you guided out west and you can come down here and do that. There's a huge delta between being able to take someone out and show them some fish and being able to explain to someone who is not very capable, maybe someone who's a little bit older and slower moving, like provide a reasonable expectation that this person can catch a permit or a tarpon or a bonefish. Mm-hmm. And I think that just takes time. And I think the idea that an individual can just come to the Keys and, start guiding within a month or two is just, at the end of the day, it's not fair to the clients. And that's a pretty easy way to tell.
Yeah.
It's like, have you done it before? I mean, that's a good question to ask someone.
Right. I just think of Sean McKay, this young guy that
fished alone for 2 years.
Before he started guiding, and he's just
and
incredible.
He also critically, he fished with a couple of people who are like regular anglers. He wasn't just taking his ace buddy or other guides.
Right.
He was taking people. I mean, there's such a difference between going fishing and taking someone fishing who's not that good at it. That's what guides do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, Ted Jurassic was great about this. He would tell Steve when we were launching in the morning, Steve would be like, yeah, my guy just struggled to get the fly there, and Ted's like, dude, that's your job.
Yeah.
That's why they're paying you. You need to bridge that gap for them.
Yeah.
But so I think when you start looking at it that way, it's a little more, it comes into focus a little bit more why it's not the kind of thing you can just go do.
Right.
That and enforcing the etiquette. Are you ready to go out there and be like, hey, this is how it works down here. And this is how it works in this place. And if you're not willing to do that, one of the most things that drives me craziest is when guys are like, I just want to stay out of everyone's way. I do too, but it ain't happening. You know? Mm-hmm. So if you're not prepared to explain how it should be done and really be confident in that, my advice is stay away.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because when you and I are out there, Dad, we're fairly good tarpon fishermen, I'd say. And we know our buddy or who else is fishing with a professional guide, and they come back and they caught 2 times the amount of fish that we caught. And we're like, these fucking guides are so good.
They're so good.
Because some people are not very good at catching tarpon, and they'll come back catching 3, 4 fish.
The guide culture in the Keys, the independent guide, where they're not beholden to an outfitter, they're not beholden to a lodge. Mm-hmm. They are driven and are driving their own success. It is the best place in the world for guide talent to be cultivated. But it's also, because of that, it's the hardest place to come and guide. And it's different. I mean, we got a really bad review the other day from a guy who came into the shop and he wanted to know where to go fishing at his own boat. And I wrote him a response. I'm like, listen, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We never signed up for that.
Mm-mm.
But
it's not your job.
Thanks for sharing, your 1-star review for the world to see.
Yeah.
But it's just, the reality is I feel for that person because it's different down here than it is in other places.
Yeah.
But it just is what it is,
All right. Tarpon88 says, please discuss the fly line you developed.
So the balance taper is, an easy way to think about it is when we're casting a ton of different distances, right? You start short, then you go medium, then you go long. And if it's windy, you want one thing because you're casting shorter. If you're casting far, you want something else. So you can divide sort of tapers into a few different categories. One would be the triangle taper. So it basically has a really long front taper, and that's great for accuracy. You have a bonefish taper, which is a really long belly designed to carry line. You have a tarpon taper, which is a little more compact, designed to shoot. And if you assume that each one of those things, a tarpon taper will help you shoot line, but it's a little tougher to be accurate with. Bonefish taper, you can carry line, but it's kind of not that great in close. A shooting head is pretty nice in close and you can shoot line, but it's really hard to be accurate with. And if you take all of those and you average them, then you end up with a taper that kind of does everything really well because it doesn't do anything terribly. And so given that when you're fishing, you never know what you could fish in the morning and it's calm and then it gets windy later. The idea with a balance taper is it's a taper that can be used in all scenarios and is not like specifically built for one thing. And the reason is if you build it specifically for one thing, it really is terrible at something else. So we tried to avoid that. So instead of like an A at certain things and then a D at other stuff, we're looking for like a B or a B plus at everything.
One of the things that I find interesting is that there are a lot of guys fishing all clear fly lines and or clear tips.
Yeah.
But you don't fish either of those.
I do now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Scientific Anglers is making the balance now in clear.
I mean, because we have the scientific angler clear tip.
His fly lines they're making.
So you're making a clear tip
so
on your
Scientific
lines.
Anglers makes clear and clear tip in, I think, 4 different tapers now. Infinity, Grand Slam, Tarpon, and now Balance. And the Balance is the taper that we developed. And we sell it exclusively in opaque, but then they make it available and it's in their catalog and it's for, with vendors, ourselves included, in clear and clear tip.
So what do you fish with?
Yeah.
You fish the clear tip?
The full clear.
The full clear?
Full clear.
When did you start going to full clear?
I think we changed last year.
Yeah. Because I knew it
we
had
were
to have been.
late to the party on that.
Yeah.
But that's the idea of a line is from a taper perspective. Like you're trying to just do everything, right.
And the last question is from yours truly, Nikki. What is your relationship like with Dave Skoke? And tell us, like, are you guys always constantly tinkering with tarpon flies and just talk about your relationship with Dave and what you've been.
Dave is, I wish you guys could convince him to be on the podcast because he is one of the world's like most interesting and most entertaining and most talented people. But yeah, we talk regularly and he ties flies for me. And then, Ian also contributes a lot to like the fly tying, like the fly discussion in on the boat. Ian ties a lot of flies as well. And it's just it's a source of like really top quality flies that I know are going to swim right and be what I want them to be, that I don't have to tie, which is really important to me personally because I'm terrible at it. But yeah, he's just he tied me some flies the other day for a tournament for the Golden Fly, which starts day after tomorrow. And they're just like exactly what I wanted.
Can I get his number?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So you were talking about like you had a bag full of flies that you brought with Ian and you guys were experimenting with flies. So are you always trying to experiment with Dave on new patterns or is it just to simplify?
Dave is like, I basically like, I give him free rein to do whatever he wants and he knows what I'm trying to do. And so he's trying, he's looking back and saying, this is what worked back then. And maybe a newer imagination of a fly, or he's researching like, some like baby turtle that lives, whatever. Like we're trying to come up with, he's a very like interested mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's cool. I think he's very much in the same way that there's like a relationship between a guide and an angler. Like Dave is, he's not just tying stuff that will sell,
Mm-hmm.
There are some contemporary fly tyers that, I remember seeing like a Cuda fly that was developed a while ago. And I was like, man, this is someone who's never like fished for barracuda. Mm. It's a cool name and it's a cool idea. And I get it. But it's like obviously not what anyone would use for those fish. Mm-hmm. Like if they ever did it at all. Whereas Dave is someone who like his flies are a representation of like solving a problem and like making a fly more effective sort of organically.
Right.
And look, they're beautiful. They move in the water. His material acquisition is like on a different level. He's able to get better materials. And he's constantly researching stuff. It's really cool. He is, he's just a great guy.
Cool.
Last question.
Tell me.
Is there anything that you haven't accomplished in fishing?
that
you really want to attain?
Bonefish tournament?
Yeah, I'm doing the bonefish tournaments with Hansen. His angler, Jeremy, I think is now going to move on to the tarpon stuff. And I fished a couple of days with Hansen in the summer. Obviously you guys have had him on. He's a great guy. And I'm looking forward to that. Look, I'm under no illusions. I mean, I don't know very much about that fishing, and I'm appreciative that he's fishing me. I don't have like a deep knowledge of how to feed big bonefish. I think he does for sure. But that's like an appealing thing, but there's nothing really that I feel that like, weight to do. Yeah. I mean, the Gold Cup was really the thing that sometimes I have like a horrible thought, like if I hadn't done it, like how terrible it would feel. But luckily that's just a thought at this point.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure.
Nathaniel, thanks so much for coming on again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I look up to you. You're an inspiration, and you're a good dude, man.
Well, I'm sorry that you guys have had to put up with me twice. I want to, Andy, let's go. I want to throw a rod. I want to show you what I'm talking about. I want you, and if you get it, I want you to admit
Promote
it.
it.
When I saw it's best that story. When I saw it's just a